Walters will have all of March Madness on their 30-plus TVs, located both inside and outside. Walk on over to Walters during your lunch break when the first round begins on Thursday, March 20th.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Young doesn't run. Pitch to Abrams is ripped down the right field line. It's fair. This one is headed toward the corner. Young has turned on the Jets. He's rounding second. He's going to third. He's going to try to score. Trouble in the right field corner for Butler. So as Young scores, Abrams into third with a stand-up triple. And the Nationals have their first lead of the series, 1-0 over Oakland.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Thursday, March 13th, 2025, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is in West Palm Beach, Florida, site of National Spring Training. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We now are 2 weeks away from opening day, which is Thursday, March 27th. The Nats host the Philadelphia Phillies Thursday afternoon, March 27th at 4:05. 4 of the 5 spots in the Nats regular season opening rotation now are set. Who will get spot number 5? We have that to discuss. We'll examine some other ongoing roster battles. So we have the Nats 2019 first-round pick, starting pitcher Jackson Rutledge now officially being a reliever. All of that and a lot more coming up on the show. It's good to have you with us. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the show. We'd love to have you on board. All kinds of ways we can serve you as the Nats 2025 regular season is coming up. Email Tim Shovers, the man who runs the podcast. Again, that email address, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a website that you can check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. 2025 Nats Spring Training now is more than a month old. February 12th was the day of the first workout for Nats pitchers and catchers. So, Mark, I ask you, are we officially in the dog days of Nats Spring Training?
The dog days is exactly what I would describe this right now, Alan. Before we started recording, Tim and I were chatting a little bit about how this is kind of the August of spring training. We're well into it, where there's not really a whole lot of new storylines. I've interviewed everybody, written about everybody of consequence, I think, at this point, but we're not quite there yet to look at the finish line. You can't really delve into those final decisions that have to be made. I don't know. We're going to get into some of those, previewing them here. But from I think a reporter standpoint, I think even a lot of the players' standpoint too, this is probably the toughest week to grind through of spring training. Get through this week. Now you see the finish line coming up and you can kind of get through that and look forward to opening day. But these are, I believe, the dog days of spring training, yes.
And to act in accordance with this being the dog days, we have some Nats guys who have been banged up here in recent days. CJ Abrams on Wednesday afternoon. Ahmed Rosario was a late scratch for Wednesday afternoon. I know Alex Cole the other day was dealing with something. Nothing appears to be too serious, but I guess even the players are plowing through the dog days of spring training at this point.
It happens. CJ Abrams leads off the game, or the bottom of the first, with a triple down the right field line, sprints around the bases, and looks good to go. And then 2 batters later, after James Wood struck out, he kind of was crouching down a little bit, looked like he was in some discomfort, and looked at the dugout. The dugout signaled for him to come in, and so he walked off the field and was replaced. The word on that is cramping in both of his quad muscles, the dreaded bilateral quad muscles. not all that unlike Alex Avila in infamous Nationals history with the Cavs. But by all accounts, everything seems to be fine. He is scheduled to be on the bus Thursday morning to Port Charlotte, a 3-hour trip. They actually have back-to-back road games on the other side of the state. The way Davey Martinez made it sound like CJ Abrams is going on that trip no matter what. So I think they're fairly confident it's nothing serious. Rosario was taking grounders pregame and said his right knee didn't feel great. Was supposed to be in the starting lineup. They scratched him for precautionary reasons. He told them, hey, if it was a regular season game, I would play. So I think we're at that point, like you said, where you're going to have some little nicks and bruises, and there's probably a little motivation to say, it's not worth pushing it right now. Let's relax for the rest of the day, go at it again tomorrow, and make sure that there's no question about any availability for opening day.
Well, hopefully CJ Abrams' quadriceps issue does for him what James Wood's quadriceps issue did for him, because Wood has been hitting the ball quite well since he came back from his quad issue of a few weeks ago. So the game on Wednesday afternoon was a 9-3 Nationals win over the Houston Astros in West Palm Beach. The Nats starting pitcher for the game was MacKenzie Gore, who had another good outing. 5 1/3 scoreless innings, 6 strikeouts, gave up just 2 hits, issued 3 walks. At the risk of reading too much into spring training stats, and we're all aware that you can't put too much stock into these things, MacKenzie Gore, who sure would seem like a lock to be the Nats opening day starter. I mean, you would think that announcement is coming sooner rather than later. Gore, over his 2 starts this exhibition season, 8 1/3 shutout innings, 10 strikeouts, 4 hits allowed, 4 walks issued. It would seem that he is looking quite ready for the start of the regular season. What we're anticipating could be a real step forward season for MacKenzie Gore.
That is the feeling about him, and everything is lining up well. You know, they haven't officially announced it, but if you can count to 5, you can do the math and figure out on what days he has been pitching. And if you extrapolate that out by a factor of 5, you will see that it lines up perfectly with March 27th, opening day against the Phillies. I would imagine that announcement will be coming here at some point in the next week or so, but it looks good for him to do that. Now, it's only his second official spring training start. He had pitched on backfields a couple of times. It still got all the work in. There was no problem there. The reason for it was the scheduling. I think one time his day fell on an off day for the team. The other time they wanted to make sure somebody else got the innings. You know, they're dealing with really 7 guys that they're trying to get starting pitcher work out of this spring as they make these decisions. And so someone like Gore, who clearly is on the team making the rotation, they were comfortable having him pitch a simulated game last time out and not feeling like he had to be in the game. What I liked best about this particular start, 2 things about it. Number 1, got through 5 1/3 on only 72 pitches. We know MacKenzie Gore's troubles often come when the pitch count gets super high, and he can be really effective, but when that pitch count's approaching 100 in the 5th inning, he just can't go any deeper. So the fact that he got to the 6th inning and was still at the low 70s, I think a really good sign. And the reason he was able to do that is that earlier in the game, he had 3 walks, 2 of them in the 1st inning. And again, think back to some of the starts we've seen from him the last couple of years, how he could turn that into a really long inning, maybe give up some damage, but even if he didn't, let the pitch count jump up. What did he do in this case? He got 3 double plays in the first 4 innings. He brushed off the walks. He was a little frustrated maybe by some close calls being squeezed by the umpire. He brushed it off, went back to work, got ground balls, got out of the innings, kept the pitch count down. It's spring training, so you don't want to read too much into it, but he has talked about how that is a focus for him, really not letting what happened previously affect the way he approaches the next guy. And this, I think, was a really good sign of that, and all the more reason that the Nationals are very excited about him and this idea of him leading the staff now going into the season.
It sets up so well for him this season. He is the number 1 guy. There isn't really any disputing that. And, you know, you think about his upside, which we all know is like immense. I mean, this guy could be a real ace. You think about the fact that he has stayed healthy, and you knock on wood when you say that, but, you know, it's not just about having the talent, it's about being durable, and he, to his credit, has been durable over these last few seasons. And because he's a guy who takes this so seriously, maybe too seriously, as, you know, you guys have come to know in talking to him, but you know that, like, he's a student of this, he's working hard at this, you know that it matters a lot to him. You know, you never have to worry about, like, Is he not putting in the work? Is he not taking it too seriously? Is he taking being an MLB player for granted? Like, no, this is his career. He really values that. He's not the only guy who feels that way. I think Josiah Gray has a lot of that to him as well. But I think there's a lot to like about MacKenzie Gore, and there are a lot of reasons to think that he's going to do well. So, with the usual caveats of who knows, especially with pitchers, right? I think the ingredients are there for this guy to hit. He already, I think, is hitting to an extent. Like we saw last season, him have a good season. So if he has a really good season this season, it's not an out of nowhere scenario. But in terms of taking that next step and becoming an ace or becoming a really good major league starting pitcher, I think everything is there for it to happen. And it's just a matter of it actually going down.
Right. And I think if you look at last season, you can break it into three parts. First half of the year, he pitched like an all-star. Good enough for that. Then he has that prolonged slump in which it really went downhill on him, and there was some real concern at that time. But then, and this was the most important thing, he came back, and I think it was his last 7 starts, had a 1.55 ERA, tops in the majors, and was doing that against some really good teams he was facing. There were the Yankees in there, the Braves in there. That ability to figure out what wasn't going right for him, to get it back on track, and not just finish okay, but finish in a dominant fashion the rest of the way, I think does speak to this perfectionist mindset that he has. Sometimes that can be to his detriment, but I think he's learning how to embrace that and how to use it for good. And the way he finished out the season, I think it made a big difference on the way he looked at himself, the way the team looked at him, and setting him up now to come into this year and say, okay, if you can be consistent, you don't have to be dominant every time, but if you can avoid those slumps, those big blow-up innings, there's really potential there to be a true frontline starter, which is the guy that he's always supposed to have been from the day the Padres drafted him.
Hey, Al Galdi here for Window Nation. The only thing more amazing than the Masson dispute finally ending is the latest great offer from Window Nation to listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, and you pay nothing until 2027. This offer is good for now through March 31st. Schedule your free estimate. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Window Nation windows are the best. Times are tough financially right now. One of the best investments that you can make is on home improvements, especially ones that increase the value of your home and save you money in the long run. Window Nation windows do just those things. 866-90NATION, windownation.com to Window Nation. That Al Galdi sent you, and make sure that you get the special offer. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy. Pay nothing until 2027. 866-90NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or you're scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. With Squarespace's collection of cutting-edge design tools, anyone can build a custom online presence that perfectly fits their design or their business. Start with Blueprint AI. That's Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder to get a fully custom website with just a few steps. From there, get discovered fast with integrated Squarespace SEO tools. Every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so you show up more often on search engines and bring in more of your ideal customers. Head to squarespace.com/BlueWire to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code BlueWire. That's squarespace.com/BlueWire to save 10% off your first purchase. You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Now the 1-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Down he goes. Herz smacks his glove excitedly as he pitches out of a bases-loaded jam and puts up a 0 in the top of the 4th. Big-time spot there for DJ.
MacKenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, DJ Herz, Mitchell Parker, each guy to varying degrees went through mid-season struggles last season, and each guy to varying degrees fought his way out of those struggles. That was one of the real bright spots of last season. And when it comes to DJ Herz and Mitchell Parker, so this battle for the 5th spot in the Nats rotation, and we are now down to a battle for just that one spot. Davey Martinez on Monday confirmed to Mark Zuckerman and others that the 4 spots in the Nats rotation in terms of spots 1 through 4 are set. MacKenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, Michael Soroka, Trevor Williams. We don't necessarily know the order, but, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that that will be the order. Gore, Irvin, Soroka, Williams, or maybe Gore, Irvin, Williams, Soroka. But spot number 5 is what is up in the air. DJ Herz versus Mitchell Parker versus Shinnosuke Ogasawara. And, I think it's interesting, maybe even unique this exhibition season, because whereas you normally don't put a ton of stock into spring training stats, because this competition features 2 young pitchers in Herz and Parker and a virtual unknown in terms of Ogasawara, I would think how they do in these exhibition games does matter, especially with Ogasawara, who, again, you're just trying to get a handle on how he does against MLB caliber batters. So all 3 guys have underwhelming stats this exhibition season, especially Ogasawara. If you go back to what has happened in recent days, so Parker had a good outing Monday afternoon. Ogasawara then struggled on Monday evening. Herz is pitching on Thursday, so it'll be interesting to see how he does then. As you see things right now, is there a player who we could label as being in the lead for that number 5 spot?
I don't think there is at this point, and that's not necessarily a good thing because I don't think anyone has really seized that. I would say that what Parker did the last start certainly elevated him, and what Ogasawara did in that one, really a continuation of what we've seen from him in his other starts. I feel like he has taken a step below the other 2. I feel like it's kind of Parker versus Herz at this moment. That could change. There's still time for a lot of stuff to happen. I think Thursday's start for Herz against the Rays in Port Charlotte is a big one. I think he needs to show them a little more. He was pleased with the last one in terms of some progress versus the prior ones to that, but he's still dealing with some command issues, has not gotten real deep in games. It's sort of what we saw from him last year, that when he's off, there are some real command issues. When he's on, he is really as good as anyone that they have. I mean, his best starts were among the best on the team last year. I think Parker is a little more consistent, what you expect from him. It was good to see him come through. I think it was important for him to have that good start. And Ogasawara, just based on what we've seen here so far, and again, there's still time, but he has not looked like a big league pitcher at this point. Now, I don't think anyone's surprised by that. You're talking about somebody coming over from Japan and having to make a lot of adjustments to the routine, the schedule every 5 days, a different ball facing this caliber of hitters. So I don't think there's like major concern there, but I think there's a realization that it is still going to take some time. Could he get it together in the next 2 weeks? Yeah, that's possible. But I think more and more they are kind of recognizing that he may need some more time after that to really develop whatever his new 5-day routine is going to be, get used to pitching in America. And if that means sending him to AAA to start the year, I think they're comfortable doing that. And then let's see over time, does he start to figure it out? And then they'd be perfectly willing to call him up after that. So at the moment, I think I'm putting Parker and Herz kind of side by side, with Thursday's outing very important and their next couple outings obviously very important, and Ogasawara a notch below them, but really needing to turn it around quickly if he is going to keep himself in that conversation at the end of camp.
I think it's important to remember, too, with Ogasawara, he got a 2-year deal worth a reported $3.5 million. And so to the famous saying of follow the money, I mean, the money tells you that This was not like some highly touted guy coming out of Japan who the Nats got. He's a guy who's done some good things and hopefully will do well for the Nats, but they didn't give him big money. And so if he has to begin the season in the minors, I don't think that's the end of the world. Like, this is not a situation where like you're bound by the contract and the contract compels you to have the guy on the regular season opening major league roster. Like, the contract basically says, do as you please because you're not paying the guy all that much money. I think the Herz-Parker conversation is really interesting. So we saw each guy at the major league level for a good bit last season, and Parker threw so many more innings than Herz did. Mitchell Parker last regular season, 29 starts, 151 innings. He had an ERA of 4.29, a whip of 1.30. DJ Herz, 19 starts, 88 and 2/3 innings, ERA of 4.16, whip 1.26. Herz, much more of a strikeout pitcher. He last regular season had a strikeouts per 9 innings of 10.76, which is quite good. Parker was at 7.93. Do you think that the decision for this number 5 spot, especially if it comes down to Herz versus Parker, is about winning this season, is about upside, is about who has more talent? Because I think this is where you get into that conversation of, are the Nats now in win now territory? Is it still rebuild territory? I know the Nats are downplaying conversation of we're still in a rebuild, but a lot of the actions do still speak to this team being in kind of that rebuild mode. I think most would agree DJ Herz has the higher upside, but like I just said with Mitchell Parker, he did things last season that Herz did not do. What do you think will be the determining factors in who gets that number 5 spot?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question that you raise about the idea of what is really the criteria here. Is it about who gives them the best chance to win game number 5 of the season? Or is it who has the best chance of being a long-term part of the puzzle? And I think they have a few decisions to make that have to do with that, not just this one. This might be the biggest one, but I think they have some other ones as well when it comes to the final 26-man roster. I think they probably deep down believe that Herz does have the higher potential, like you said. But as you pointed out, fewer innings last year, and somebody that they might watch a little more closely and feel like they can refine a little more. So I would not be shocked if they felt like that was better off having him start out at AAA to do those things and maybe even manage his workload a little bit. You know, is he able to go and make 32 big league starts this year? I don't know if they're comfortable with that. Whereas Parker almost did that last year with 29 of them, and he just had 150 innings. I think it was the most innings by a Nationals rookie since John Lannon way back in 2008. So there's less concern about Parker in terms of, can you just throw him out there and keep him there for the whole season if he's healthy and if he's productive? So I think this may be one of those cases where the decision they make coming out of camp is not necessarily who do we think is going to be the guy at the end of the season, but who's best prepared for it right now. And if that's the case, I could see Parker maybe having a little bit of an edge over Herz, but I really do think these last few games matter. And Davey Martinez kind of said, he said it in a joking way, but he meant it with there's some truth to this, that he has said to all those guys, hey, I'm not making the decision here. You guys are making the decision with how you perform out there. And so far, none of them has really made the decision for the team. So let's see this next time around how it goes and if somebody helps make that decision for him, because I do think it's pretty much wide open.
In terms of other roster battles, so there aren't necessarily a ton, but there are some things to be thinking about. Mark wrote a really good piece for MASNsports.com, came out on March 12th, so came out on Wednesday morning. Headline, quote, "The state of the spring roster with 11 days to go," end quote. Beyond that number 5 rotation spot, what most hits you as a compelling roster battle for this Nats regular season opening day roster?
So I think you would normally say, and especially given the state of the bullpen coming in to camp, they'd say, boy, the bullpen is probably the biggest decision to make. I think that's kind of sorting itself out, to be honest. I think they have 5 and probably 6 spots already locked up. Finnegan, Law, Lopez, Ferrer, Sims, and Colin Poche, who's on a minor league deal, but has significant big league experience, and I think he's making the team, and barring anything else happening. And so there's really only 2 spots left after that. And 2 guys that we saw a bit of last year, Eduardo Salazar and Orlando Ribalta, have both pitched very well this spring and kind of seized that, I think. I think the real question in the bullpen is the Rule 5 draftee Evan Reifert, who has just not shown us much of anything other than a lot of walks, a lot of long innings, not looking like a guy who is forcing them to keep him on the roster. I think they're going to have to confront this decision, in the next week or so. Do they think they can afford to carry him on their opening day bullpen and then keep him up here per the Rule 5 draft regulations? Or do they offer him back to Tampa Bay? He's going to have to turn something around real quick to do that. And as I said, I think they have two others in Salazar and Ribalta that have certainly earned the right to make the opening day bullpen. So that may lock it up with 8 guys anyway. So given all that, I think the most interesting question, and this is the one that kind of goes to what we were discussing earlier, is the last spot on the bench. So let's presume that there's a backup catcher, and I don't know whether it's Riley Adams or Drew Millis. Neither one has really seized that one either, but one of them is going to make it. You know that Ahmed Rosario, who was given a guaranteed contract, is going to be on the team as a backup middle infielder and can also play the outfield. And probably safe to say that Alex Call is the 4th outfielder. Robert Hassel has had a great spring, no doubt, but they're not going to put him on the team if he's not playing every day. Call is a backup outfielder, so I think probably safe to say that he makes it. So that leaves one spot. And here's, I think, where it gets interesting. What are you looking for in that last spot? I see 4 legitimate candidates for that one. They are Jose Tena, Juan Yepes, Andres Chaparro, and Nasim Nunez. All guys who spent a decent amount of time with them last year and even got a decent amount of playing time, all but Nunez, I guess, in that case. I think it's a great sign that as an organization, these guys who were regularly in the lineup last year are all competing for one bench spot. That is progress to be in that position. So I think that's a good thing. But now, what do you want from that spot? Do you want a potential power bat off the bench, a right-handed power bat like Chaparro or maybe Yepes, who has some more defensive versatility than Chaparro? Then you go that way. Do you need another versatile infielder, a guy who could play third if Paul DeJong is not the everyday guy? Well, that's Jose Tena. Or if you really are focused on trying to do whatever you can to win close games, they do have some, let's call them lumberers in their regular lineup. Josh Bell, Nathaniel Lowe, Keibert Ruiz. There are, I can imagine, some situations that are going to come up in which a pinch runner would be very valuable. And Nasim Nunez could very much fill that role for them if they wanted to keep him. Great defense, we know. Not going to give you a lot offensively, although he's had a nice spring offensively. He's not going to play unless CJ Abrams is hurt. But if you kept him on your roster as a 26th man and actually did use him as a pinch runner in those kind of spots, that to me suggests that they are concerned about trying to do whatever they can to win as many games as they can. And so I think that's a fascinating discussion that they're going to be having here before the end of camp.
Well, it's funny you bring up Evan Reifert, you bring up Nasim Nunez, and we've seen the Nats in recent years really go to the well of the Rule 5 draft, and you get these mixed results. So often the guys don't pan out. At times they do. It's interesting with Nasim Nunez. He did give them something last season, and the fact that he's in this conversation that you just brought up, I think speaks to that Rule 5 pick perhaps having been worthwhile. But then you think about someone like a Thaddeus Ward and you say, boy, we went through all of that. And for what? So I would just say this about Reifert. The fact that you spent a Rule 5 draft pick on him should mean nothing. And if you think he's worthy of being on your team, keep him. And if not, let him go. But I think it'll be a sign of progress when the Nats stop dancing the dance with the Rule 5 draft picks, and especially stop doing the thing where they feel truly compelled to keep the guy, like, no matter what. Because I think the Thaddeus Ward scenario was particularly instructive. It is nice to see that Nunez is perhaps a piece here moving forward. And, if you hit on 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 of these guys, I guess you say it's worthwhile. But I don't like seeing that a guy was taken in a Rule 5 draft dictating that he makes the team no matter what. I don't think that should govern what you do with, an Evan Reifert. So hopefully it's just about the performance and what they think about him moving forward, as opposed to, hey, we spent a Rule 5 pick on him, so we kind of have to keep him no matter what.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll tell you, as far as Nunez is concerned, I never would have imagined, like in June or July last year, that we'd be talking about him as a candidate to actually make the team, maybe even at the end of the season. I don't know that I would have imagined that. The idea was, okay, you survived the year with him on your roster, go send him to AAA and let him play every day, and maybe he ends up being somebody that helps you down the road. But if nothing else, you got some organizational depth at a position where they were kind of lacking at shortstop. It's to his credit that he has made some significant strides over the last year, especially at the plate. You knew he was good defensively. You knew that he ran well, that he has put himself into that conversation. And I think there's a valid argument to say that he could help this team. They're certainly not required to keep him on the roster anymore. They've satisfied all the Rule 5 stuff. They can option him to AAA, and he's a part of their team or their organization no matter what. As far as the other guys go, I could see the case for like a Chaparro or a Yepez, probably a better offensive threat, certainly, and the ability to maybe hit the ball pretty hard. I'm just looking at what kind of opportunities are those guys going to have. You know, the starting 3 outfielders are going to play pretty much every day. The infield, aside from third base, is fairly set, and I don't think they're going to platoon or pinch hit much for Josh Bell unless he's really struggling. So I don't know if there's be a lot of pinch hitting opportunities for a Chaparro or Yepez, even though they may be a valuable piece to a team that did need a pinch hitter. I'm not sure the roster construction here, though, suggests that those are things that they're going to need all that often. Whatever they decide to do, I really hope, both when it comes to the bench and the bullpen, that they assemble a 26-man roster in which they use all 26 men. We've seen way too much the last few years. Guys not just being kept on the roster because they think they have to, but like not even being used for weeks at a time. Whether that's a Nunez or even go back to Michael Chavis as the utility guy a couple of years ago, was on the team the whole year, didn't even get to 100 plate appearances. You mentioned Thaddeus Ward, but also remember there were times when Tanner Rainey and Jordan Weems were struggling and they couldn't trust them in any situation of consequence, and they might go 10 to 14 days without pitching. I really hope that's not the case anymore. I want to see all 26 actually used, and to me, that's a sign that they are trying to win more and not just stashing guys at the back of a roster that you're worried about giving up on because you might think you lose them on waivers or something like that.
Something else, too, is, and this goes back to, are you trying to win now? Is there an urgency to win now, or are you still in development mode? But, you know, you mentioned Josh Bell, right? So we know that Josh Bell is notoriously streaky, and we know that he began his initial stint with the Nationals really struggling, and then he came on. If he struggles to begin this regular season, do the Nats stick with him no matter what because they feel like they need to? Is it more, hey, we're trying to win now. If you can't get the job done, we go with somebody else? Is there a loyalty that is felt to Josh Bell? They're not paying him much. And as I've mentioned, he has not had a good last few seasons. In fact, his last true real success at the major league level was with the Nats. He, since leaving the Nats, has not done so well. You wonder if maybe the Nats can get him back to where he was at in 2021, 2022, can unlock the Josh Bell code to where he gets back to performing at that level. But, you know, I think that's going to be telling. If someone like a Bell, who you're not paying a lot of money to and who you just brought here, or in his case, brought back here, isn't doing well early in the season, do you stick with him? Because, again, you feel compelled to. You know, we've seen this in recent years with, say, like a Nelson Cruz. Or is it, hey, buddy, we're trying to win now. You know, we're going to play a Chaparro. We're going to play a Tenna. We're going to go with somebody else here because wins matter now in a way that they haven't mattered in a few seasons.
Yeah, I think it will be very telling if and when that happens. Hopefully it doesn't and Josh gets off to a good start. But I do feel like they are somewhat committed to him. I mean, they didn't spend a lot of money this winter, but they did spend the little bit they had on someone like him, specifically wanting the power potential from him as well as the clubhouse leadership. And I would imagine, as long as it wasn't wretched on his part, that they would at least stick with him into July, hoping if the team isn't playing well, that he's at least playing well enough to merit trade consideration. If you get past that point, maybe you're willing to move on from that. But you're right. If at the end of April, you know, the batting average is well under 200 and he's hit a couple of homers, but not much else, and going through one of those slumps that we've seen him go through before, would they say, all right, you're still on the roster, but you're not necessarily going to be the DH every single day, and let's give a Yepez or a Chaparro a chance to see what they would do? I'd be fascinated to see if that scenario came up. And again, that would be a sign of them really transitioning into a different kind of overall mindset than they've been in the last couple of years. I think ideally it doesn't come to that. He performs well enough to merit playing every day. But I think with Paul DeYoung, who just kind of penciled in as the guy, they gave him $1 million. It's not a big major commitment. But right now, who else do they have? I think it'll be telling in the first month or two of the season how they approach it if any of these guys get off to bad starts.
Hey,
Hey Nats fans, after the exciting Nats game, have a listen to some relaxing solo piano music to unwind and help you go to sleep. I'm Tim Newmark, the composer of the Nats Chat theme song, and you can find my latest music on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, and anywhere you stream music. The song you're hearing now is called Improv in A-flat major, The End of the Road.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Payoff pitch, 3-2, swing and a miss. He struck him out with a fastball, and that retires the side. We'll see if that is how the day will end for Jackson Rutledge over 5 innings. He strikes out Acuna, 2 strikeouts in the inning.
So late last season, one of the many conversations we had on the podcast was about Jackson Rutledge. And I asked you if you thought that we might see in 2025 the Nats pull the plug on Jackson Rutledge as a starting pitcher and make him a reliever. The Nats took Rutledge in the first round of the 2019 MLB draft, took him with the number 17 overall pick, and it just has not happened here. He has dealt with injury, but he also has dealt with ineffectiveness. And, time moves quickly. We're now in 2025. Are you going to keep trying to figure it out with him as a starter, or do you end up doing with him what happens with a lot of starters who struggle? You make them into a reliever. And sure enough, Davey Martinez to you guys on Wednesday made it official that Jackson Rutledge now is a reliever. He joins Cole Henry as a prominent Nationals minor league pitchers who are being converted into relievers. What did you make of what Davey had to say to you guys about Rutledge?
Well, first of all, this actually happened a few weeks ago. We just didn't all pick up on it maybe as quickly as we should have. In spring training, as I've said, they have so many starting pitchers that sometimes these guys pitch out of the bullpen and get a couple of innings, and so you don't really think too much of it because they have to get their work in somehow. But the fact that he was still in camp and hadn't been sent down, which is what you would normally do at this point for somebody who is being prepped to start the season in the minors, that did kind of stand out to me. And just the fact that they probably have 5 better prospects to start at AAA for them right now. We've talked about the pitching depth they have that's better than they've had in quite some time. And I think there's a strong case that they have 5 better options than Jackson Rutledge at this point. So unless you're willing to cut bait altogether and DFA him, and clearly they're not there yet, then this is the only other move to make and say, okay, let's see if you can dial it up a little more in a 1 or 2 inning relief appearance. And he has been throwing it hard, 96, maybe even 97. Maybe that can work. Maybe this can be a new path for you. It's probably at this point his only realistic path back to the big leagues. And not that he's been seen a lot in the majors, but we've seen over the last 18 months, several others in the organization pass him on the depth chart where you just don't really feel like there's a viable path for him to be a big league starter anymore. So they'll give this a look. I don't expect him to make the team coming out of camp, even though he is officially still here. I would imagine they want to get him used to that routine as a reliever at AAA, but maybe it works for him and he can come up and actually do something for them. Cole Henry's in a similar position. I think that one's a little more injury related than anything. Cole Henry still got really good stuff, and he's had an excellent spring performance-wise. He can still dial it up to the upper 90s, and the thinking there is, hey, use that in a short burst for 1, maybe 2 innings, and that could be a true weapon. Again, he's got to still adjust to that and show that he can stay healthy and pitch effectively for a while in the minors before they would call him up. But I think both these guys would now be on the list as potential bullpen call-ups along the way, and it's maybe not the ideal path. You hope certainly with a first-round pick like Rutledge, you would have gotten more out of him to this point. But as you said, very often this does happen to young starters who don't pan out. See if they can make it as a reliever, and sometimes it works really well and they have great careers from it. Not saying that's guaranteed to happen here, but I think they reached a point where they kind of have to give this a shot because I don't think there is a viable path for him back otherwise.
No, I mean, this coming season is his age 26 season. Like, it's go time. You know, he's going to be in his late 20s and still not have been a mainstay at the major league level. I don't blame the Nats at all for basically exhausting him as a starting pitcher. Like, you spent a first round pick on him. You really do want to try to make it work. I don't think you can say the Nats didn't give this ample opportunity. They did. It just did not happen. And, well, I think you could look at injury as of a few years ago. I think we are kind of past that point. Like, he's had plenty of opportunity at this point to show that he's worthy of this, and it just hasn't happened. The performance just has not been there. It's a reminder, too. I mean, Jackson Rutledge looks the part as much as any starting pitcher is going to look the part, right? Big guy, strong guy, throws hard. You know, Mike Rizzo like salivates over prospects like that. But it just has not happened. And, you know, you take a step back and you look at these Nats first round picks in this condensed period, 2016 through 2020. Carter Kieboom, Dane Dunning, Seth Romero, Mason Denneberg, Jackson Rutledge, Cade Cavalli. You know, we never talked about this. Kieboom and Denneberg now are gone from the organization. Like, they're not just mired in the minors. They're gone from the organization. Seth Romero is long gone from the organization. At least with Dane Dunning, he was part of the trade package for Adam Eaton. So, okay, there's that. And we'll see with Cade Cavalli. But I feel like this only increases the pressure on Cavalli to work out to some extent. But, of course, that's still a giant mystery with where he is at. There are a lot of reasons the Nats had to go into a rebuild. It's not just about first-round picks. They didn't hit on non-first-round picks. But, man, you look at that run 2016 through 2020 and how little the Nats got out of first-round picks, it really stands out.
Yeah, it's probably, if it's not the number one reason, it's on the short list of reasons why they tore it down in 21, as we've gone over so many times. Why did they feel like they needed to trade Trey Turner, and then especially the next year, Juan Soto? Because they did not feel like they had the horses within their own system to make this rebuild happen, to put them in a position to win again anytime soon, and to sustain what they had done for the better part of the 2010s. Yeah, there are other reasons behind it as well, but it is a major factor in that. And if those first round picks especially had turned into not even just star players, but just big leaguers, quality big leaguers, I think it could have altered the way they approached all of this. Maybe for the worse, who knows? Maybe they were better off in the end, having it be as bad of a situation as it was, and it maybe forced the issue for them to do the hard thing and trade Soto and get all these prospects back. And now they're in a much better position now than they may have been otherwise. But when we look back on the history of the Washington Nationals, I think their lack of success in drafting over that stretch of time that you're talking about, it's not just a few years. That's a good long stretch of none of them panning out. I think it was a huge, if not the number one reason that they ultimately traded away guys like Trey Turner and Juan Soto.
I'm struck by this, too. So 2017 pitcher Seth Romero, 2018 pitcher Mason Denneberg, 2019 pitcher Jackson Rutledge, 2020 pitcher Cade Cavalli. So little success with those guys, at least so far in the case of Cavalli. The Nats since then have not spent a first-round pick on a pitcher. 2021, Brady House. 2022, Elijah Green. 2023, Dylan Cruz. 2024, Seaver King. Is that just coincidence because you don't really plan these things? Do you think maybe the Nats' lack of success with these pitchers 2016 really 2017 through 2020, has entered into their thinking when it comes to what they do from a position standpoint with first-round picks?
I don't think it was intentional, but subconsciously I could see how that maybe figures into it. I mostly believe in when they say you take the best available player, whoever that is. And let's say, for the record, if the Pirates had taken Dylan Cruz, number 1, the Nats would have happily taken Paul Skeens, number 2. And if they held the number 1 pick, my guess is they would have taken Skeens with the number 1 pick, given the rare kind of talent that he is and as proving to be at the big league level. So I don't think it's an organizational shift to say, no, we're just going after position players now. But deep down in their subconscious, I can imagine there's that little reminder in the back of their head that says Romero, Denneberg, Rutledge, Cavalli, maybe go for the safer pick at times in position players. Although it should also be pointed out that Elijah Green, can't miss 5-tool position player prospect, is still got a long way to go to prove that he's ever going to make it to the big leagues, given how much he swings and misses. So not just a guarantee that taking a position player is a better thing.
It's funny, the Nats taking Eric Fetty with the number 18 overall pick in 2014 all of a sudden looks a little better with what has happened with Fetty, albeit since he left the Nats. Fetty with the Nats, not so great. Fetty since leaving the Nats, a lot better. And, I'll say this for Fetty, even with the Nats, at least they got some mileage out of him at the major league level. You can't even say that when it comes to, a Romero, a Denneberg, a Rutledge. We'll see again with Cade Cavalli. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast, and you can email the program natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We, this season, again, are doing Nats Chat Podcast shout-outs. If you would like to send a congratulations, a happy birthday, a get well soon, whatever, to someone who listens to the podcast, we'll happily deliver your message. Email Tim Shovers, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Fetty rocks, kicks, throws. Swinging a ground ball, chopped to short. Turner reaches down to his left, whirls all the way around, and fires to first to get his man. And Eric Fetty, for the first time in his big league career, has finished off 7 shutout innings.